Hi, I'm John Green, and this is Crash Course U.S. History. Today we'll be talking about reform under Franklin Roosevelt. After the stock market crash in 1929, the U.S. economy took a dive off the deep end. The price of stocks fell to a mere fraction of their original price, and almost overnight, whole family savings were lost. Of unemployed workers roamed the cities of America, going store to store seeking jobs. Franklin Roosevelt's presidential campaign had happy tunes and an upbeat tone, which contrasted the helplessness and despair of the raging Depression. The Democratic Party used the song Happy Days Are Here Again, which matched the optimism and hope that Franklin Roosevelt promised. Promises and results are two different things, and when Franklin Roosevelt became the 32nd President of the United States, he had to put his money where his mouth was. Roosevelt was a progressive reformer and promised to take the U.S. out of the Depression through relief, recovery, and reform. Roosevelt didn't believe in just simple relief towards the unemployed, and instead preferred to provide work relief in the form of new jobs. New government agencies such as the Work Progress Association, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, or the AAA, and the Tennessee Valley Authority helped alleviate some of the economic problems of the Depression. Now, let's go to the thought bubble. The Tennessee Valley Authority Act was especially controversial in that it altered the government's role in the economy. It essentially built dams to prevent floods and deforestation and provided cheap electricity to those in the region. Government was in direct competition with the private sector in building electricity. The Tennessee Valley Authority also brought to the forefront the debate of the role in government, and Roosevelt believed that government had a large role in economic affairs, which is a sharp contrast between Herbert Hoover's insistence that laissez-faire, hands-off form of government is the best way to solve the Great Depression. The WPA employed 8.5 million people at its peak to construct infrastructure and public improvement projects. Thousands of hospitals, bridges, and schools were built thanks to the bill. Possibly the most important part of the bill was the creation of thousands of miles of highways. $11 billion were put into the WPA, which passed into the hands of millions of workers. The workers' wages directly went back into the economy, which helped alleviate unemployment and jumpstart the economy. The AAA was passed to raise farm product prices and provide relief to farmers. It set farm production quotas and subsidized farmers to produce less crops. However, only landowning farmers saw benefits from the AAA, and the African-American majority of sharecroppers were ultimately left without any aid. The paragon of Roosevelt's Second New Deal, the Social Security Act, upheld Roosevelt's beliefs that the government should intervene in public structure. The Social Security Act at its core created unemployment insurance, retirement benefits, aid to the disabled, and to the poor. Directly funded by payroll taxes, the Social Security Act received much criticism from conservative politicians. It was a stark contrast to the Hoover administration, which failed to provide aid to people at times of need. Because the federal government was intervening into the private sector with new reform bills, many opponents of Roosevelt branded him a socialist or a communist. Roosevelt enacted the Securities Act that regulated the transparency between big business and the public. When Roosevelt was first inaugurated as president, the Supreme Court went to great measures to prevent the government intervention programs he wanted to be passed. Roosevelt threatened to create more seats in the Supreme Court and fill them with his own judges, guaranteeing that his reforms would pass. The court ultimately became more willing to comply with Roosevelt's request. The pressure from his opposition, namely Long, Coughlin, and Townsend, forced the president to change his plan for the New Deal. In fact, one could argue that the only reason why Roosevelt ever changed his plan for the New Deal was simply so that he could respond to these attacks. Without these demagogues, there might have never been the New Deal as we know it today. And now for today's mystery document. The social objective is to do what any honest government of any country would do, to try and increase the security and happiness of a larger number of people in all occupations of life and in all parts of the country, to give them assurance that they are not going to starve in their old age. This quote is from a press conference answer that Franklin Roosevelt gave before his second inauguration. I think that's what it is.
Mr. Green. So is the New Deal what ended the Great Depression?
Knowing me from the past, it did not. By 1940, a whopping 15% of the population was still unemployed. This number was significantly down from the 25% before Roosevelt's presidency, but it's still more than double what our unemployment rate is today. What ultimately drove the Depression to an end was World War II, notably another massive government spending project. The New Deal was, and still is, a crucial and relevant aspect of our nation's history. It forever changed the way that Americans interacted with their government and how the government interacted with its people. As Roosevelt stated in his inaugural address, the government was and is meant to prevent a greater security for the average man. Thanks for watching. This has been John Green, and I'll see you next week.